What's up, guys? So in today's video we're going to be discussing on how to implement authentication to your React application, and luckily for us, Clerk has made that process a lot easier. As you can see, they said, or they are saying rather, that they are more than authentication and they offer complete user management, which is true. And one cool thing I really like about Clerk is that they give you access to their previous components, so you don't need to create a sign in button or a sign out button and all that stuff. And it's also customizable. So let's just dive right into the video and see what it has to offer. Alright guys, first of all, sorry for the background noise you're hearing. So let's just dive right into the video. We're going to be using Vite as our tech stack, and Vite is a build tool to create React applications, like create React apps. So let's just install it and say create Vite at latest. Just give that a minute. So the project name will be the default part name, which is Clerk, and Vite is available for plain JavaScript, Vue and React, Servlet, Solid and others. So we're going to be using React and will not be using TypeScript, working with JavaScript. Let's just install it. Okay, while that is installing, let's head over to our Clerk dashboard. And if this is your first time using Clerk, it should tell you to sign in. But let's just click in dashboard. Alright, so I already have some applications up and running, but I'm going to add a new application. I think if this is your first time, you should just see only this add application. Okay, so let's give this application name Clerk Auth. As you can see, how users should sign in, and it has a lot of social connections you can use, and the default is Google and plain email address. You can choose to use only Google. I think we are going to just use that in this video, and you can also add GitHub, Apple ID, and like I said earlier, this whole stuff is customizable, but we won't be doing that in this video. Let's create the application. Alright, so you can see that Clerk is available for Next.js, React, Remix, Redwood, and so on. But in this video, we'll be working with React, and we are also going to be referencing their docs. So let's just head over there. Alright, before we go on with the docs, let's just copy this .env file and go back to our code and create the file .env and paste in the code you just copied, save. And before, okay, let's just create the server. By default, Vite gives you this port. I think it's called instead of 3000, it's called 5173. So let's just configure that back to the default port. I think it's called server, then the port should be 3000. Save. So if we run our local dev Give that a minute. Okay, so we've set that back to 3000. Let's just open that. Okay, before we go on to using the Clerk doc, let's just clean up these files. So open the socks directory. We don't need this app CSS. We also don't need all this. Can just create our own and say for now this should just be Clerk Alt. Get rid of this as well as this. And lastly, clean up this index or CSS file. Okay, so let's go back to the browser. Okay. Alright, cool. So let's head over to the Clerk docs. And the first step here said we are going to, or we should install the Clerk SDK so that we have access to the pre-built components like the sign in button, sign out, and those stuffs, and their hooks too. So let's just copy that again, open a new terminal, and paste this, and let's just also install the React router DOM because we are going to be creating routes too. Allow that to install. Okay, while that is installing, the next thing they said, we should set up our environmental keys rather, and this is the key we'll be using, but by default this is not the file we created. Remember, we created a Clerk application, Clerk hot application, which is this. So depends on the file or folder you're in, it will depend on the key you're going to get. All right, so that being said, the third step here said we should Clerk requires your React application to be wrapped in a Clerk provider so you can have access to the hooks and other components. So let's just head over to our code that has finished installing. Let's go to our main.jsx, and firstly we need to import the Clerk provider from Clerk, and we also need to bring in our env file. And if it's your first time using Vite, unlike a Create React app or Next.js that you'll be saying stuff like process.env, in Vite is actually kind of different, and I don't really know why they didn't stick to the regular standard. So let's just go back to the env file, copy this, so paste this here, equals to import.meta.env. So we need to still create a variable called publishable key, and we just pass the Clerk publishable key there. Now we need to wrap our application inside this Clerk provider. So we wrapped our application there, then this Clerk provider has this publishable key, and we need to pass in our own publishable key. Alright, cool. So next, I think the next thing to do, now we have access to Clerk in our application, The next thing to do is to create routes. So we'll be creating just two routes. Let's just create this component first, called the home page JSX. By the way, if you don't know what that means, it's a code snippet RFC. So if you can install that. I think it's called ES7 React native snippets. So you don't need to write this boiler code from scratch. So once you just type RFC, this boiler code will be created for you. So the next component we'll be creating is called dashboard.jsx RFC. Same thing. Don't miss import. Okay, let's go back to the app. Now, if you are familiar with React Router, let's just open. Okay, I have their docs already open, and this is one of the easiest ways to create router. So can just copy this, go back to our code, paste this in. So create browser router, create route from elements, the route and the provider. And we also need to create our own router by creating this variable called router. I think it's the same thing here. So first bring in this create browser router, open the parentheses and call this create route from elements, open another parenthesis and just create an empty fragment and pass in the routes. So for now we'll be creating two routes. The first one we call the home and the second will be the dashboard. So we use this property and this element property too, but the element will be passing our home component, and we need to still import it. So shift alt down, we still need to import our dashboard, and the path here should change to dashboard. You can also make this path to just use forward slash, but using index will still give you the same thing. So I like to stick with index. Alright, so we've created our own router. So we need to pass our router to this router provider here. So can we be able to create and navigate through different routes in our application. So we're calling this router provider and passing our router. Save. So if we go back to our application, this is the home page, and if we go to the dashboard, I have access to the dashboard. So let's just go back to the home page. Alright, so let's head over back to the docs. Before we'll skip this for now, but we'll come back to this in a bit. So let's just bring in the Clerk component that we have access to. So for the home page, we need a sign in button. So you just say sign in with this button. Let's wrap this in H1. Sign in with this button. So we'll call in the sign in button So you have access to many stuff, sign in button, sign up. I think there's one just called sign in. So sign in button. So, and this, like I said, you can customize all this stuff. And before, okay, let's just do this. If I sign in, the page will refresh. Okay, we used only Google, so continue with Google and sign in. Give that a minute. All right, so we are signed in, but we don't necessarily know that we're signed in, but we're signing. That statement is really funny. So for us to know that we are signed in, there's a Clerk component called user button where you can have access to your accounts and manage accounts and stuff like that. So we head over to the dashboard. Let's just pass this and say welcome to your dashboard. And call in the user button, save. So by the time we go to our dashboard, you can see that we have access to this user button here. So assuming we were not signed in, we only have access to this welcome to your dashboard. But since we are signed in, we have access to the user button, and you can sign out with this. You can manage accounts, so have access to your profile. You can connect multiple accounts. So if you have if you added GitHub, I think that would be available here. You can connect it to use one Gmail, and you can see the device that you are logged in with. You can also delete accounts. All right, so let's just close this and sign out. So let me just go back to the default. All right, so remember that when we sign in, the page refreshes, but if you don't want the page to refresh and you just want a pop-up modal, you can just go back to the home page and say the mode should be a modal, and you can also redirect the users to any page you want when they are signing. So direct the user to the dashboard once they are signed in. So by the time we click on the sign in button, the page won't refresh. We just have this cool looking pop-up which you can also customize again. Don't know, I'm stressing on the customizing. So let's click on this, and hopefully once we are signed in, we should be directed to our dashboard. Okay, all right, that's cool. So next we'll be talking about the protected routes now. So, and I am not necessarily following all the codes here. Like you can see now, they use this old format of create browser router, and the one we have here is create browser router, but they still do the same thing. So let's just sign out and go back to car host. Okay, so by default, if we go to the dashboard when we're not signed in, we'll have access to this welcome to your dashboard, but we won't have access to the user button because we're not signed in. But this is not actually right, because if you have a website where you have a dashboard you really want the users to see this text only when they are signing. So we need to wrap this whole component in a protected route, and it's very easy to do that. So let's just go back to our application, and you can do that here, you can do that in the dashboard, you can do that here, but let's just do that in this app folder. So get rid of this, create an empty fragment. By the way, this is also in the docs, so you'll see that in docs too. So let's say that if the user is signed in, then they can see their dashboard. But if the user is signed out, you can redirect them, redirect to sign in. You can also do whatever you want here. You can add in a sign-in button and stuff like that. So, but we'll leave it as it is. Save. Alright, so once we go to this dashboard and we are not signing, we should be directed to sign in, or sign in rather. So continue with Google. Alright. Okay, so that worked. Alright, so I think the next thing to do is to talk about the hooks we have. So there's one called use user, there's also one called use auth, and with each hook you have access to different properties or values rather. But the one I really like using, let's go back to this dashboard, it's called use Clerk. And with this use Clerk you have access to the user's details. So passing this use Clerk. So if we console log out the user and open our log file, so this is what we just logged. So as you can see, we have access to the full name, the user's first name, some objects that you can also reference. So there's a bunch of stuff you can do with this, but just for simplicity's sake, we should just have make a little demonstration. So if you want to just add the username, you can just say welcome to your dashboard, then pass in the user and the name here, full name, or just say first name. So save. So you can see now, close this inspection. Right. So welcome to your dashboard, Lawrence. You can do a lot of stuff with this. So let's just, before we conclude the video, let's just head over to dashboard. You can see we only have one user. You can see the total amount of user you have. Then you also see your active users, number of signups and number of sign-ins. Okay, so there are also some stuff you can do from this dashboard. Like for instance, if you go to, what is this called? I think it's in path. Okay, sessions. So now you can, if you enable this, for instance, you can see that once a user is not signing or is inactive for amount of hours, you can sign that user out. And this is very, very simple. And normally when you're using a customizable or something you built from scratch, you have to code all this out, but this is just right in front of you and you can just apply changes, and that will be take shape once you refresh this. So automatically after 5 hours and I'm not active here, it's going to log me out. All right, so the last thing we'll be talking about, yeah, so if you also need to send your user data to your own database, like your MongoDB database or your own Postgres database, you can do that using their webhooks. And I don't really know why you would do that, but just for backup purposes, or I really don't know, but that should be the next video on how to send your user's data, your Clerk user data, to your own database. Alright guys, so that's the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it.